Welcome to the INTJ Equation, a channel on typology and psychology from the lens of an unhealthy INTJ. I am your host, Jeff, and today I am joined by Finn. He is an INTP, pretty young guy. I forgot how old he was, like 20 or so. Let him introduce himself, and he's from Germany. Want to tell the
Yeah,
people a bit about yourself?
yeah. My name is Finn. I'm 20 years old. I live in Germany, and I've just been interested in typology for like about 2 to 3 years. Yeah, mostly familiar with the CSJ system. I've dug into some other things. I like to just add from like objective personality system, some of the things that I like. You know that system? Yeah.
I'm not too familiar with it. I know about the jumpers. They type people's jumpers and stuff,
Yeah.
but other than that, I haven't really looked into them too much.
I just like to just watch all kinds of people and just see what I think is useful to just add to my knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. Just I
Yeah,
don't
just
know.
kind
That's
of
like
be
the
open.
TE way. Yeah, the TE way, I think, is kind of borrowing from other people and building a system. I don't know.
Yeah, it's important that I do that as well because I have the tendency to just go with one person.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're an INTP in Germany. What's that been like for you?
It's interesting. Recently, I found statistics about types in certain countries. I don't know if you've ever looked at that. I don't know how accurate they are, but in Germany in particular, there's a lot of ISTJs and ISTPs. I think they make up around like 30% collectively.
Really?
Yeah, just in general, a lot of SJs, SPs. Um, like for example, in Japan, most people are actually NFs, so that's very different.
Really? I heard they're mostly NT.
Yeah, but actually, no statistics. It was NF. I don't know how accurate they are, but the NFs
Yeah.
had a little gap on the NTs. Uh, but yeah, in Germany, it's very sensor focused. I think like 70% of people are sensors. So obviously, it's always been kind of I don't know, kind of feel like it's like a little outcast, right? Like I don't know, nobody understands you. Everybody just I don't know, just yeah, never really fit in. Never really fit in. Um, but I don't know. I feel like I've been able to adapt relatively well. Like it wasn't too bad with me. I was kind of I was doing pretty all right in school. I had a good amount of friends.
It's
Yeah,
always a struggle with the introverted, intuitive thinkers, I think.
yeah, for sure.
INTs.
I think they're the most hated probably from all the types.
Really, do you
Like,
think INTPs are hated? I think they are when they're younger, but once they get over their FE inferior insecurities, they can actually become kind of jolly and people really like them.
yeah, for sure. I just think in school or in like earlier, like when they're younger, I think NTs in general are probably the least liked temperament because the NFs at least they're all nice and empathetic or sympathetic, like they can relate to people better, but we're just over there, trying to do everything our pragmatic way, don't really
Mhm.
adhere to any of the structures, and kind of just tell people how we think things should get better or things should be improved. I think they really don't like that, especially the
Yeah,
SJs.
yeah, SJs are they want to keep things the same even if they're not working.
Yeah,
So you said that ISTPs and ISTJs are statistically, I take statistics with MBTI types with a grain of salt because
yeah,
there's so
for
much
sure.
mistyping, but why do you think those two are so prevalent? Do you think it's just because of the snow and people become naturally more introverted or
Um, I don't know particularly why. I think I haven't really thought about what makes certain countries lean more towards certain types. Um, over Germany, I guess if you look at the history, it's more like it's a more structured country, I guess, than some other countries. That would explain all the SJs. And I guess they always had a affinity towards concretion. They don't seem to be also fancy like Japan is more abstract in nature, for example.
yeah, I met a
Yeah,
few Japanese people. I do judo with them. One's at ESFJ, one's at ESFP, and this one
yeah.
ESTJ guy that I didn't get along with. He was like a owner of a school, so I didn't go to his school. But
Okay.
Yeah, I just see like the NT because their philosophy is like do the best you can in school, like work really hard and work ridiculous amount of hours a week and stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the best philosophy, but it kind of seems like pretty prevalent there. But I'm sure it depends on which types of Japan you go to.
yeah, sure. Different areas of different types.
All right, I want to get into the functions here a little bit.
Mhm.
So what's it like being a TI hero?
Well, I mean, I think the thing most people can agree on is it's very hard to just not think. Like it just kind of annoys me at times, like everywhere. Like every time I work home from work, um, it's kind of funny sometimes. I always like when I conclude something, for example, I always have to explain it to myself. In my head, I'm like, okay, so this is like that, and then my head's like, why? And then I always have to go over the explanation, even though I already know what I'm gonna say. It's kind of weird. I always have to explain things to myself to like exactly to just verify that what I'm thinking is actually accurate in a way. And then like I stored that conclusion as like a memory.
Interesting. I always like to hear people's perspectives on NI Dom between the difference between NI and TI Dom because I have a hard time picturing what it'd be like to have a TI, but
Yeah.
that does sound like the TI cynics for INTJs when we're not being lazy and just kind of blowing through information, I guess, that we'll sit there and repeat it to ourselves over and over and verify to make sure it's right before we take any action. But sometimes we just kind of jump to conclusions and move
Yeah.
just for the sake of moving on.
I heard with NI it just more comes to them. They have a hard time explaining it.
Yeah, it's hard to like
Yeah.
we'll picture something in our mind and like we'll try to say it like this doesn't make any sense.
And I always have to be able to explain it.
hmm Yeah, I think that's
I
one
have
thing
to be
about
able. Yeah.
INTPs and INTJs. Like INTPs have to be sure and comfortable.
Yeah.
We just
Sure.
kind of want to get to the next point, really.
Yeah. And then with the NE especially, uh I think the TI already has a hard time to stop thinking, and then the NE comes in with just I don't know, just all kinds of random things. Like when I sit on a trial, I just oh, it's kind of I don't even know how to describe it. It's like I listen to a song while I'm thinking about something, and then I have to like adjust the words in my head to the rhythm of the song in a way. I connect those things.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know, but while just thinking about a bunch of other stuff coming in at the same time, and I don't know, just random ideas, and I can't shut them out, and that's really annoying. It's like a curse, I guess. If you get a lot of ideas, people think it's very, it's a benefit in a way, but it's a curse because, you can't shut them out sometimes, which then, leads to poor focus, for example, at work.
Yeah, yeah. So that's like a struggle with like INTPs and stuff in school, right? They just don't want to focus on it and
Yeah.
kind of off in their own world.
Yeah, it's like you can't even really control it. Like if something piques the NE, its interest, it just kind of goes after it because it's so high in the function stack. It has a lot of authority, kind of just does what it wants.
It's
Yeah.
hard to regulate it.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever kind of told you that maybe like you're autistic or you have ADHD or anything
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah. That's so annoying. People, I, that's a general that's the thing with the general public. The majority will just look at anything that differs from them and label it with some disorder, basically.
hmm
Like, if you even read on the internet the ADHD symptoms, like most of them you can associate with just NPs in general.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they lose things. Yeah, because they have low SE, right? I mean, it's not a disorder, it's just the nature of the person, really.
And I think
Uh,
it's the same thing as for SE DOMs. Like people are like trying to say, "Oh, does your son have ADHD?" And I'm thinking he's an SE
yeah,
DOM. He's only 5, but some people just aren't meant to sit in front of a book for 6 hours a day. Just not their role in society, and
exactly, yeah.
try to medicate them when they can't do that.
It's just because the SJs dominate society, they want everybody to, structure it the way they like it, which is, this. 9 to 5 work scheme, and they want everybody to adhere to that and have the same skill set that they have. And we can see that not everybody is created for that purpose. But yeah, like all kinds of like for yeah, so many. Well, with autism, right? One of the things is like, oh, the people, they just don't understand the emotions of other people. Like they
Mhm.
can't empathize. Oh my God, like what's wrong with them? Like that's just INTJ is what like every trickster,
Yeah, for
Like that.
sure.
I'm like, man, that guy's autistic. Because man, why is he so socially weird? And he's not concrete like us, man. This guy must be autistic. I Yeah, it's really annoying. I think
That
the
or a
most,
psychopath. Like
yeah,
he's so cold, he just doesn't take people's emotions into consideration. Maybe we're just not aware of them.
yeah. And so I think a lot of maybe like even the majority of people just get misdiagnosed with something, and then they kind of use that as a shield as they get older. Like, I'm autistic, man. Like and then it develops into like low self-esteem. They're like, man, I can't go to this party because I'm so autistic, and everybody tells me this and that. Like it's a problem for them to like it's another roadblock for them to overcome to develop into healthy adults. It's just hard.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's some people I talk to that say they're autistic or they're ADHD, and maybe they are. Maybe they do have these problems. I don't know. I'm not inside their head, but
Yeah.
I kind of lean more towards type in most cases, or other, or like I think trauma is a big factor too.
Yeah. You know what I actually think with ADHD, for example? I think most people that are P-types, right, just generally, they could probably, if they wanted to, get an ADHD diagnosis
Hmm.
if they just wanted to get medication. Um, I think it's more of that most, like a lot of P-types, they don't want to think that they have ADHD because like, it attacks their self-esteem and stuff like that. So most of the P-types who don't even get a diagnosis is because their whole life, they just took themselves out of it. I don't know, this whole ADHD disorder is a little bit, I don't know.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm for people who generally have it. I've seen people who generally have it and they just can't focus for to save their life. But
Yeah.
there's people out there. Medication and treatment is, it works for them, and I don't want to discredit them in any way. But I think it's overblown and just a way of big pharma making money.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So we talked a little bit about NE. So it's just something, ideas just kind of come in your head, then you have to think about them basically, right?
Yeah. Like, I don't know, I'll see something and I'll make some connection to it. And then I don't know, something like a memory I attach to that idea that I got. And then I get a new idea from that. Yeah. So I think it has a lot to do with memories. Like sometimes I just remember something that I haven't thought about in like 2 months.
Mhm.
And then I get a twist on it. Like a twist to that comes to me, like a way to improve it or whatever.
So you're like your SI, like your memories of something that you just
Yeah.
recollected, and you find a new edge to it.
Yeah, exactly. Like it just randomly happens. And then, yeah, and then I get excited about that. And I think about the whole topic around that or whatever. So yeah, it's just pretty random.
All right. Your SI, how does that affect you more? I know like INTPs and INFPs, they like to get comfortable and they don't like to do things. So has that ever bothered you where you kind of stay idle?
Yeah, I think that's definitely been a big problem of mine in my whole life. Just me not taking action, like in a lot of situations. Uh, Definitely am affected by it. Because it like, and then it works together with your inferior function as well. Like you like to stay comfortable, and at the same time, you kind of fear being judged by other people. Like with every inferior, like how they feel towards me. And yeah, it's really hard. I don't know. But I have it's definitely very useful to like get into like a TISI loop. Uh, that way I can be very disciplined and just do things according to how I think they're best done. That's what I've practiced a lot in the last few years, like developing discipline.
So like there's a big misconception that when you loop with your first and third function, that it's always a negative thing. So you found ways to make it positive.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a bit toxic and perfectionistic way, like, with the whole um, systematic approach that I either, yeah, I'm kind of like extremistic. I kind of really like to do things like, half-ass, a half-ass way. I guess that can get pretty toxic because you like drop things like balance, uh, in favor of doing things to the best way you think they can be done.
Yeah, and I just want to point out to the audience too, this has been bugging me. I had a Elon Musk video where I typed him as an INTP, and a lot of people think he's an INTJ. I just want to point out your cadence and Elon Musk cadence. It's pretty much identical, basically, and that is due to interaction styles, which we're going to talk a little bit later. But you can compare my cadence to Finn's cadence here, and you can see that INTPs and INTJs are actually quite different in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure. It's another funny thing. Uh, that's all the Elon Musk thing is all about the stereotypes.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, in connection with the conscientiousness, because yeah, obviously Elon is like a very conscientious person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason people give him that J trait is because they think, oh my God, he's conscientious. He has to be a J type. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
That was my
Uh,
biggest, that was my like rebuttal to their argument. Like, well, he's really ambitious. Like, well, you're stereotyping him for one thing. I mean, Einstein and
yeah,
was no slouch either,
yeah.
or Abraham
This is
Lincoln.
a lot of people just don't have a very big picture in the functions. Um, unless the stuff is like taught in school, more focused on in school, like people will just keep having these stereotypes. It would be very useful to actually like implement this in school, but with SJs, that'll probably take decades and decades.
Yeah.
Kind of a
Yeah.
lost cause. But I find it interesting. At least I know about it. At least I can, make use of it. Try to show other people how to make use of it. And you try that
Yeah.
too.
I think everybody has the right to learn at their own speed and
Yeah.
the way that they're meant to learn, really.
I think it's making bigger waves in psychology as time goes on. I've heard some psych students. I, I don't know. I think one guy told me they were actually watching CSJ's videos in class or whatever. I think it's becoming more polished.
Maybe, yeah. I know, like Joyce Ming. I don't know if you're familiar with her. I interviewed her, and she said it's actually pretty considered in Canada in their academics thing. I know here in the
Uh,
US, you're kind of laughed at if you present
yeah.
typology in academic psychology or clinical psychology.
Huh. Okay. Well, decent Canada. Yeah,
Mhm.
I've seen some of Joyce Meng's videos a bit ago. Haven't watched the video in a bit. I
Okay.
know she does these. Gets a bunch of people with one type, and then they talk.
Yeah, or she'll compare like um,
One.
temperament or
Yeah.
things like that. She has a big variety. She has a really cool channel, so people should check it out for sure.
Yeah. Sure.
All right, we haven't talked much about your FE. How does that work for you?
I think I think I'm actually an example of more of an unhealthy FE user. I think I think that's kind of been a problem for me as I was younger. I think I'm more on the I if there's like a sociopathy scale, right? I may be a bit higher on it. I think that has I think that's more genetically influenced. Um, but the FE I had a lot of problems like developing it. And what I think is interesting is nowadays I have a lot of mood swings.
Mhm.
So like certain days I'll be very just very calm and very chill, and other days I get very aggressive and things easily irritate me. And it seems that on those chill days I'm very empathetic. I'm very kind. I have good intentions. And on those other days, it's kind of just gone. So I think it's like an on-off thing. It's like either I fully empathize with something or I just don't at all. Like there has to be a certain, there has to be a reason attached to it, I think. I'm definitely very justice focused. I treat other people the way I want to be treated. Um, but if I see something happening to some person and I know it's their fault, I can't really empathize with it, like at all. But in other ways, I guess you wanted to ask me about FE and Fury, how that affects me socially as well, right?
Yeah, you can go into that as well.
Yeah, like, uh, well, what I found is, I mean, for the last few years, I was more secluded, and over that period of time, I've definitely seen that I've gotten more shy. But earlier, like when I was in seventh grade, when I was like 13, 12, I was actually pretty decently socialized, and I didn't have as many problems with it then. So I think if you just expose yourself enough, you can improve that in fear function. The longer you seclude yourself and be alone, the more it'll affect you once you go out again.
Mhm.
It's kind of just you have to expose yourself to improve it.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up with an INTP friend. We kind of met in high school, and he had that problem where his FE was kind of low, and he didn't really try to empathize with people. It was more about the truth,
Yeah,
like because like I'm like the same way. Like if you just didn't have your problem, then you wouldn't feel any emotional response from it. If you just solved the problem, basically.
yeah,
But as you gotten older, just through trial and error, and you're a young guy too, so we don't expect you to have everything developed at 20.
yeah,
I find that the older you get, the less mercy people have on you. So it's definitely good to start that path for sure.
yeah, for sure.
So you felt over the next few, like, I guess maybe a lot of people have been feeling that way because of COVID and stuff. I don't know how it is in Germany right now, but it's pretty bad here. I'm just getting over it.
Yeah. Oh
Has
yeah.
that contributed to your antisocialness?
Yeah, it's kind of just with the general things I've been doing, they had well for the last like few years, my goals were very much focused on being inside, doing something that is inside. So I stopped prioritizing social life
Mhm.
uh, because I kind of didn't. Yeah, to me, I think that might have to do with like being outcome focused. I always need um, if I don't if I look at like an activity and I don't see a productive way where it's going or a use I can make of it in the future, I kind of just lose interest in it. That's kind of what I've developed. Like I need to be doing something that I see has a future in a way.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily an outcome. Just I want to do things that I think are like useful. And I just thought, well, going outside and just socializing, whatever. There's no like bigger picture to that. It's just kind of I don't know, pointless.
Yeah. I have a similar outlook. Like, what is making small talk with this person? Where's that going to get me? But
Yeah,
I guess if you kind of do look at the big picture, it's like you said, going out and exposing yourself. If you practice with this person and, it's like dropping a 100-pound weight on your foot, basically agonizingly boring at times, but you'll build those skills. And when you do meet the people that you want to network with or want to form a relationship with long term, I guess you'll have those skills ready. Kind of way I'm
yeah,
trying to get my mindset into looking at that.
yeah. That's good. It just depends on the lifestyle. Like it really just depends on lifestyle.
Yeah. So you said you work right now? What do you do?
I'm just doing job training. I don't know how it works in America, but in Germany, you do school and then you can either go to college or you can you can learn a job. It's like a
Grade?
3-year time period where you get paid like a very low wage because you're like at the bottom of the hierarchy and you learn a job. But I don't know. I think that system is very bad. I'm not a big fan of it because like you end up doing so many activities that have nothing to do with the actual job. I think what people learn in 3 years, they could learn in 1 year, and then they could start employing a lot more people a lot sooner. I guess they don't want that because then they have to pay them more money. They want to save money. Maybe that's why they do it. Because basically when you finish your job training, you just get more money.
Yeah.
That's like the goal of that. But I'm just using it as like I actually don't intend on finishing my job training. It's 3 years. And if I do 1 year, um, I get like when you do like 1 year of job training, you get and you have a certain school certificate, you can
Hmm.
then attend like college basically. Like you have the ability to then attend to college. Otherwise, you won't be let into it.
So you have to do that 1 year of job training to get into college.
Yeah, it's not a popular thing. It's a kind of a loophole. Yeah, it's kind of a loophole. I just want that to be an option for me. I don't even know if I want to go to college. I just want to have that option
Yeah,
in
that
case
makes sense.
yeah. But I see this is one of, I guess a lot of people would call this a problem. I guess I have a lot of confidence in myself to get an income for myself outside of a job. So like my idea is just that I will be working basically like a minimum wage job or a little bit above minimum wage for like 25 hours a week. And even then, I did all the calculations and the finances will be enough for me because I don't need a lot of money. And then I just have all the confidence in myself that I can get another income for myself. I guess like you could call it a problem for INTPs, like with the TI hero. Like I just walk around, I just think I can do things. I just assume I'm gonna be able to do anything. Like I'm competent enough, you know.
I was just gonna ask, what's your trade? What are you learning?
Yeah, but I'm looking into trading for sure. You know, trading
Well, we
the
call it in
market.
the US, we call it a trade school. We don't get it
Oh
paid
yeah.
for. You have to go and pay an arm and a leg basically to learn a skill like make a computer programmer or even like a plumber or a beautician or something like that.
I know,
But
but I was just going to self-teach with like, you know, tutorials and whatnot. Like a lot of
yeah, I was just
people
like,
are.
what was the job you're doing? What are you training?
Oh, the job. Oh yeah, the job I'm training. I was just some IT, how to be an IT systems manager. So like
Okay.
you work at a company and they have a bunch of software they sell and you just know how everything works. You sell the software, you troubleshoot it. And I mean that's an alright job training, but I'm just not interested in that job.
Yeah, you kind of want to make your own thing, right? You just want to get skills so you can do your own thing eventually. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah, makes
I'm
sense.
just using that as a stepping stone. I see people who are so okay with just going there every day and they've been there for like a decade. And I just look at that and I just think I could never do that. Like these people, they sit there 8.5 hours a day because it's like a 30-minute break and an 8 hour day.
Hmm.
And as of recently, I've been trying to sleep more. And in order to sleep more, I literally come home and maybe I go jogging. I just barely have any time. I have like, I don't know, 3 hours, 4 hours. Like it's not a good life. That's horrible.
Yeah. I mean, just getting onto that rabbit hole before you get caught too deep into it and start getting debt and kids and car payments and stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
best to find out when you're young, as I'm trying to do it now, and I'm going to middle age. So
Yeah, I look at these people and they're so fine with it, going there every day, and I fucking hate it, you know.
it's the easy path. It's the easy way, just having someone lay it out for you. You don't get paid as much. It's not very glamorous. It's boring, but
A lot of people are very comfortable with that, especially the SJs, but I'm not comfortable with that at all.
yeah.
I guess you could say I'm a bit of a risk taker. I don't mind taking a risk. Uh, you know, like for example, my brother, he would hate to take a risk.
Hmm.
He does not want to take the risk at all. And he's also very unconfident in himself. He would
And
never think that he could make any of that stuff work. Yeah.
yeah, we're talking about him. I've been meaning to type him, but it's just been getting over COVID and some other obstacles. You think he's an INFJ or INTJ?
No, no, he was an ENTJ.
You think he's an ENTJ?
Yeah, he's an ENTJ.
Okay. What makes you think that?
Well, I mean, obviously, I've known him all my life. Even and I found this interesting. Recently, my grandma told us a story. Even when we were younger, for example, um,
Hmm.
there was like a story where there was we were talking to our neighbors, the neighbors' kids, and my brother like initiated them, and he was very direct. He was telling them exactly what they were going to do. He was like, okay, you go to your parents' place, you get this stuff, you come back to us, and then we go to our we basically play. So it'd always be very initiating. There would be like gatherings, and he'd always go in, and my grandma would tell me that I always just stood on the side, just kind of observing. So I think that's interesting because we were like 4 or 5 years old at the time, and even back then, you could kind of already see the shaping of the personality.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like me being introverted and him being extroverted. Like, yeah, he's always been very initiating. We would be in a bus together, and he'd just speak to people. He'd just speak to people because he could. Like, I was, I told him, dude, you can't just speak to people, man. And he was like, yo, watch me. He just
Yeah.
went around talking to everybody. So he's very initiating. He's always been very pragmatic. He kind of acted out in school a lot. He had a lot of problems in school. Uh, he got like detention. Yeah, he wasn't the healthiest child growing up. He's improving himself now. He's gotten a lot better over the last few years. Um, yeah, let me think about it. You could always see that he was. Oh yeah, he was very. He actually has this. He has OCD. He has to wash his hands a lot.
Mhm.
He and I figured out that that might have primarily been due to his any critic because he's just super afraid of yeah the bacteria, like what could happen to him. So I think that's my theory on how he developed the OCD. And like he started washing his hands for hours every day. Like he peaked at like 10 hours in a day in the bathroom. Like one day, it was kind of crazy, but he got better. He went to like therapy with it. Uh, so he's always been very pragmatic, initiating. He's pretty abstract. Makes a lot of comments about underlying principles of how things work. Really, I said it as being NI.
Mhm.
He always talks about the bigger picture when we talk about things in society. And another thing I've noticed is he's very interested in me talking about abstract things. And what you will see is if you're, for example, talking to an ESTJ, they will not show an interest in your
Mhm.
NE because they do not have the NI. But I think just people being interested in NE abstractions kind of shows that they're abstract in a way. Kind
Yeah.
of points towards that. Yeah.
Having
So
an
yeah,
interest in it. Yeah.
yeah, he's always been interested in that, and uh, yeah. Another way that I just want to touch on this. This might be a bit more about along the stereotypical route, but what I found is like in order if you want to see if a person has like an extroverted inferior function, right? So
Mhm.
if they're like an introvert, what I've seen is every time they're confronted with new people that they haven't talked to before, you always see a big difference with extroverts and introverts. Like the way they engage new people really suits their optimistic extroverted functions. And I don't know, I always see a very clear difference, especially in that situation. But for example, when they're like talking online to friends, it's a lot harder to see it there. Like if they're talking to people that they know, it's harder to distinguish if that person is actually responding or initiating.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like typing over text and stuff like that because you can take the time and answer the way you want to answer. You can
Yeah,
basically answer like, 'cause you're a different type. You can take like if you're asked a question in person, you're kind of on the spot to answer and do it more naturally.
yeah.
All right, I want to get into the shadow functions here and knock these out. So you did mention some of it. How about your TE opposing personality, nemesis, whatever you'd like to call it? How does that work for you?
I think the biggest difference I've noticed is because it's not I'm afraid of what other people think of me. I think the T nemesis acts out more in ways of I worry about what other people think in general, if that's correct. I always I have the tendency to just yeah, right. the typical to just think that they're stupid and that they, yeah, questioning their judgment, basically questioning the statistics, the labels. I don't have I don't like labels. I don't like to label myself. I don't like to believe things when I first see them, like statistics.
Yeah.
And when somebody like says something, like they state something as a fact, I'm always, what is the word? Like I'm always
Skeptical of it.
suspicious. Yeah, skeptical.
Okay.
Like for example, like when I go on personality database, the website,
Oh, that's horrible.
I just go through it and I'm like, oh my God, these all these people, man, I have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's just like a voting consensus of people too, and they're voting like somebody's type, and it's just atrociously wrong. Like every time I look at it.
Yeah. It's kind of a it's kind of a field for a bunch of unhealthy TUs to gather as to just take a wave, take a side, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of take a position. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all
And
really
then
is.
opposed to anything, and then opposed to any argument that is made against it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. It's one of my biggest things I make rebuttals against in my videos.
Yeah.
And how about NI nemesis, or not nemesis, but cynics?
Critic? Yeah.
Critic, yeah. John Beebe calls it cynics.
Oh yeah. Well, that's been a big thing. That's been a big thing in my life. I think that ruins a lot of like like INP's lives, really. I think it's kind of thrown me over because um like a few years ago, I had to make that decision. Do I want to go for like a more of a social life or more of a secluded life? And it took me a while to do that. I had to like expose myself to both of them and
Mm-hmm.
like try them out. And then only after a while, I was able to conclude um, basically what to do. But I had this problem that when I give myself, like when there, for example, when there are two options, or when there is one option in the picture, if I add another option to that, then I automatically risk always going back and forth between them.
Mm-hmm.
Like the more options I give myself, the worse it actually is. I have to like, it's really bad because I figured out like I can't consistently want one thing. It changes.
Yeah,
So I have to just do what I should do.
that's why you
I
like to
have to,
leave things open.
huh?
That's like you only like to leave things open. Don't really like to have a schedule or like I want to focus on this. You just like, okay, well, this came up and changes everything.
Yeah, I like to do things in that way, obviously, but I don't have an affinity towards it naturally. So if I have the choice to, I would rather not plan and I would rather not structure my day. Like my brother always structures his day. And I'm like, man, I just know what I want to do in my day and I'm just gonna like keep track of it and just do it
Mm-hmm.
as it comes up. Like when I go shopping, for example, my brother's like, yeah, he always knows what he's gonna get, man. Like when he goes to the bakery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I like to just go into the store and to just like sometimes I buy some random fruit that I've never tried, you know. Like I'll buy a pineapple, and because I don't know, I just like new things, right? I like new things, and I like to just go into a store and be open to what I could buy, for example.
Yeah.
And some of those, like the parts about that or the areas where they are not useful, I try to remove them. I try to basically discipline my behavior in certain areas, but when it comes to little things like going into a store, I won't change my behavior or I won't try to because it's not a problem to me. So
Okay.
I have a problem with my nature and the way that it's kind of obstructive to productivity in a way, or being like a lot of activities that you do. For example, if I want to make my own income stream, right, I have to know what it is that I'm doing every day, and I have to structure it correctly. So in an area as that, being very any is not useful at all. So I have to change behavior.
So it kind of sounds like your SE trickster is coming into play where you're not really aware of like the physicality of things and kind of the I guess, the
Yeah,
physical rules of things, and you kind of don't take those into account.
for sure, for sure. That definitely plays a role. Like, yeah. I also have a problem just yeah, and another thing I've seen is I have a problem sometimes taking in information concretely.
Hmm.
I always look for the underlying meanings. I always interpret something into something that someone's saying that they don't mean. That's caused me a lot of problems as well. I think that's like, you really need to learn like as an NP to take things literally sometimes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I always like misinterpret like what my brother is telling me because he's just being direct, but
Hmm.
I interpret indirectness into that isn't there, and yeah, it's caused problems.
Really, even though somebody tells you it's black and white, plain, like in plain English or German or whatever you guys speak, but doesn't really
Yeah,
register, and you're just like looking like, what does he mean by that?
yeah. Like I will compare it to something he told me earlier. I will make some connection with it. I'll assume something from that.
Or like he contradicts himself.
Yeah, for example, or when he said something earlier that kind of questions what he's saying now.
Hmm.
Like yeah, contradiction basically. But yeah, but even in life in general, yeah, my whole schooling path, like in Germany, you do the first 10 grades, and then you have like you do 10 grades, and you have like a basic qualification to go into job training.
Hmm.
But if you want to go to college, you have to do an additional 3 years in like a higher up school. So yeah, and back then, the only reason I even went into the higher up school was because I had not thought about it at all. It was just because I was like, oh man, back then I was like big on having friends and whatnot,
Hmm.
and I wanted to I was like, I need another shot at this, man. Like I'm gonna, like I use school as like this as like a networking system, social networking thing. So I was just gonna go to school for that, and yeah. So I kind of left that school 1 year early, which is why I now have to do this job training thing for something that I don't even know if I want to do it. So it's so scattered. It's really bad. Uh,
Yeah.
I think like
Well,
a lot of MPs, they'll just start doing something in college, a course, and then like 2 years down the line, they'll change.
yeah, I think that's really common. What about your FI demon? I always find that kind of interesting with INPs or ITPs.
Yeah, that one is very interesting. I talk about it a lot with my brother. Uh, he's always like, no, it was like this dispute we had where I was like, yeah, well, I basically don't have feelings, and he's like, no, you have feelings. Uh, because it's so shallow that it's almost then it's always just doesn't it's almost as if it doesn't exist. Like I will just basically during any day, like good or bad or anything that happens to me, right?
Hmm.
Could be like a very sad thing happening or a very happy thing happening. I feel like I'm always the same when I walk, for example. Like I'm always just like if you ask me how I'm doing, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how I'm doing. Am I happy or am I sad? I don't know. I don't really, because I just don't pay attention to that stuff. But sometimes
Yeah.
I'm really sad. Like, I don't know, I'm listening to a song that triggers some memories or whatever, and I'm sad. And I may even be depressed for a week or two, right? I fall into a depression and I just don't even know. Like, I'll be sad and I'll be like, wait, am I depressed right now? Am I sad? I don't know. It's just so weird. And obviously, I'm not very moral. I don't really, people, for example, veganism. Like, do I have an opinion on that? What do I think it's a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. I really don't. I don't. I don't really judge the value of things.
Hmm.
It's not a concern for me. I don't, or LGBTQ plus stuff, right? I don't have a problem with it. Do I advocate for it? Do I have a big opinion? No. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah, just doesn't really matter to you.
Yeah, and I just have a really hard time. I don't know when people just ask me how I feel. I just have a really hard time expressing my own emotions, even.
Yeah.
Just for example, with the family member, when they tell me love you, right?
Hmm.
I find it very. It just doesn't seem right. I don't know. Like I, I don't like saying love you. I don't like saying that.
Yeah,
Like
especially
my,
when you're like socially obligated to say it back and it might not be true.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I just always like my dad. He's an ISFJ, and he always says, love you, heart emoji, and I always just have to say it back. But like, I mean, I even I'm sure I really like my dad. I just don't. I don't know. I don't want to have to say love you all the time. To me, it's
Yeah,
just not
it's kind of
comfortable.
redundant.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Okay, I want to move on a little bit. We're getting a little short on time. So we talked about like responding versus initiating the kind of the dichotomies with Linda Barron's and CSJ adopted, as well as myself. What do you think are the misconceptions of it?
I think the most important thing is to look at the situation. Like, for example, if you have a person that's on a podcast, they're going to the podcast to talk, right?
Hmm.
Like, and maybe the subject that they're talking about, they're really passionate about. So if they're an introvert and they usually don't talk a lot, that will be the time they'll be initiating.
Yeah.
And to make your judgment on that podcast that that person's initiating, I'd probably, just don't focus on the initiating versus responding. You can focus on other things. Uh, yeah, for example, like when I'm here on this podcast right now, you could say I'm pretty initiating.
Hmm.
But if you see me at my work environment with my coworkers, I'm probably the most responding person in the office. Like I'm so shy all the time, and it's like two very different people. So it very much depends on the environment, the interest, and the discussion. And some people they're like on a scale. Like for example, when you're with your friends, you're going to be more initiating, but you have some people who even when they are with their friends, they're not very initiating. So
Yeah, I think it's what Linda Barron's really hits home. Like these are preferences. They're not like set in stone traits. Like everybody
yeah,
will initiate, everybody will respond. It's just kind of what you do more of, and that's what makes you lean towards introversion or extroversion.
I think generally the thing that holds people back from initiating is when their inferior function gets triggered.
Hmm.
As soon as that inferior function is fine, like they'll initiate.
Yeah, but then there's still like preferences. Like, yeah, I'd like to sit at home by myself and recharge for days on end, but
Right.
I'll go socialize just because it's kind of the healthy thing to do, I think, and everybody needs to get out of their shell a little bit.
Yeah, that thing as well.
And just as kind of like we ties into the next thing you want to talk about, the importance of quantity when typing. So like if somebody initiates once, that doesn't mean they're an extrovert necessarily.
Yeah,
Like,
so many, I think CSJ has missed out a lot of people because he will just gather some evidence on certain traits, and then like the guy initiates once with his friend. He's like, oh, then there's the initiation. Now I have my picture. He's initiating the outcome direct. That's
yeah,
bad. You always need to get at least, I don't know, like 4 or 5 examples of a trait, I think, to really make sure that the person has that trait. Because anybody can, do anything. Like this outcome person might do something that you associate with movement, but you just have to verify it all.
yeah, type is very complex, and that's one
I
reason
think,
why I don't like MBTI as well either. I think it simplifies it a little too much.
yeah, for sure. I think movement types will probably have this problem the most. Like they just want to type people fast.
Yeah, for
I,
sure.
yeah, I think outcome types they made sometimes a better job when they just give themselves more time.
I think it could be a lot of different things, but consistency is a big important key. And like the point you brought up, like you're going to interact differently on a podcast than you would with your coworkers. So you have to take that into
Yeah,
consideration as well.
exactly. So when I see like a person like talking a lot and initiating a bunch, like for example, my ISTJ coworker, when I first met her, she's very talkative. Like she talks a lot at work. But you
Mhm.
also have to assume she's been there for 25 years. She's on the phone every day, all day. She's like in the secretary and she takes phone calls. She has a lot of practice. She's very comfortable in her environment. She knows all of her coworkers. She's high up in the hierarchy. She has a good status there.
Mhm.
Obviously she's gonna talk more, but at the same time, she's just super movement all the time.
Mhm.
It's like she is she's not a structure type, is what I'm saying. She's a background type, not a background type, a finisher type.
Mhm.
And I could have just so it was important to recognize that, not to type her as initiating. It's yeah, I guess that the whole initiating was responding is it's kind of a bad thing in general, as opposed to some other things.
Yeah, and there's other ways to look at it too, like introverts need time to recharge alone or just with a very
Yeah.
small amount of people, and extroverts need to socialize with a big group. Excuse me a second. And we talked a little about this with Elon Musk about conscientiousness, and I think that's what you're getting at because he's ambitious and very goal driven. At people type him as a INTJ usually.
Yeah, that's yeah. So like people will just they see an ICJ and they're just gonna automatically assume, oh, that guy is very conscientious. But like what goes into it are a lot of, I think, just factors that are genetics. Like like some people just naturally they aren't very ambitious. They're ambitious. They may be very they may be not very stress tolerant. They may be very like negative. Like they don't have a lot of confidence. They're not very opportunistic. So like a lot of these traits are very important for conscientiousness, and they are not exclusive to J types at all.
No.
Um, like you'll see a lot of P types. I guess one of the advantages that they have is that they're like Savior SE or as NE is usually very opportunistic, and they also probably on average have more optimism towards achieving those things,
Yeah.
and that gives them a certain drive. And um, so they show up every day, and they may be more bored, but they are also just very driven. Um, whereas maybe the ISTJ, you don't really see them being very euphoric as much as some of the other types. I'm
Yeah.
just using ISTJ as an example. So yeah, like a lot of traits go into it, like yeah, stress tolerance and optimism,
Hmm.
ambition is kind of just a thing, you either have it or you don't.
Yeah, it seems like that, and upbringing is a big thing too. It seems like some people who are just have a crappy upbringing, just they
Yeah, that
are
as well.
relentless.
Upbringing and just the nature of a person.
There's a lot of variables for sure.
Yeah.
And what about stereotypes in general? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, like certain people, especially on like the personality database, they just assume because a certain person does a certain thing, they can't be a certain type. Like for example, I don't know if you know this about like Doja Cat. Do you know Doja Cat? Have you seen
Who?
the Doja Cat? She's
Oh
like
yeah, a
she is
rapper.
yeah, the rapper, right? She's everybody thinks she's an ESFP, but like she's actually an INTJ. And people just automatically assume, oh man, she's wearing a flashy outfit. She's so good with her SE. She's dressing all well. She's a she's a music artist. Man, she can't be an INTJ. She just automatically can't be an INTJ because man, INTJs are not like that. But like INTJs can be like that, obviously. It's important to just remember that anybody can do anything. Like only because your type has a certain affinity towards certain activities doesn't mean they can't do other activities.
Yeah,
Like,
I've
oh, this
never.
guy's really good at martial arts, man. Oh, he could never be like an ENTP, right? And then it's like,
Mhm.
you have Bruce Lee, for example, who
He's
does
not an
exactly that.
ENTP. That's someone
He's
I
not
see
an
us
ENTP?
jumping
Okay,
back
sorry.
along. Yeah, we've,
Okay.
we've looked into him. I think he's an ISTP or ISFJ, possibly, probably an ISTP.
Okay, but there is probably an ENTP that's very good at martial arts, and you could use that person as an example to disprove that.
For
So it's
sure. Yeah.
important to keep that in mind. Yeah.
I think someone with high NE could definitely be good at martial arts. They can just kind of anticipate the moves and the patterns that the other person's going to do and kind of
Yeah.
go off that and figure that out. Yeah, I've never really typed Doja Cat personally. I know that I think that's someone at CSJ typed INTJ as well, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, and you said people being in other sides of the mind and other CSJ theory, which I do think there's some validity to, depending on our age. What do you mean? Like what age exactly?
What did I say? Something about age? No, I was just no, just what I wanted to say is that's one of the things I haven't really noticed so much. Like when people are talking about people being in the other sides of their minds for years,
Oh, okay.
like I just don't think you can be. I just don't think you can consistently be in another side of your mind for so long. Like the your ego functions, I think they always come through. I've tested it with myself, and like when I'm in like my ENTJ shadow, it doesn't really last that long.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't just be like, oh, you know, I'm gonna use my ENTJ like shadow to get all this work done. It's not gonna happen. Like I'm gonna just fall back into the ego.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of my
Yeah.
personal experience with it. Like I don't think I don't know. I don't think it's as deep as people say. Like for example, CSJ said a thing like when your inferior function aspires, it becomes like the best, you know? So for example, for an for an ENTP, if their SI inferior aspires, it will outlast an ISFJ. I just don't think that that's ever going to happen because they're just going to go back to their ENTP ego and then they're just going to fail because it's about distance, you know, it's about like outlasting, right? I don't think they could stay in their subconscious for that long.
Yeah, I don't think he meant for a long period of time. I think he even said it in bursts. Like, for example, like I do judo, a martial art. We're
Mm,
talking about like stereotypes, INTJs are, but their SE inferior are the most athletic SE, but I've always been kind of athletic and strong actually. But
yeah.
I am getting quite good at it. I do have size as one advantage and strength compared to a lot of other people, but for a short amount of time, I can be really good at it. But I don't think I could do that all day, every day. And for like
Yeah, yeah, for that
the
it works. I
and
agree.
for like Mick Foley, he's an ENTP. I don't know if you're familiar with professional wrestling at all.
Nah,
He's this wrestler from like the '90s. That's when he was big. He just took a ungodly amount of punishment on his body, even though wrestling say it's fake. They get hurt basically, and I think he just kept taking that punishment and taking that punishment, and he kind of aspired with his SI inferior into his
yeah,
ISFJ side. But
yeah,
my
definitely.
Go
Mm.
ahead.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot more sense. Abusing the other sides of the mind for short bursts to do something they usually don't do. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. But to just think that you can just abuse another side of your mind to do something for you every day, I don't think that's very practical.
Yeah, it's like saying if Doja Cat, if she is an INTJ, I don't know. I despise rap, honestly.
Yeah,
She probably couldn't be like that all the time, just like when she's on stage or doing an interview and she
right.
acts like her little gangster persona or whatever she does.
Yeah, sure.
But other theories I have, I think like being in your shadow or even like your super ego, if you subscribe to that, like I have avoidant personality disorder. I don't know if you're too familiar with that. It's basically kind of sounds like SI demon in a nutshell, where you like have you heard like the INTJ, INFJ door slam?
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, I think that's kind
Like
of
when they stop taking care of themselves because other people don't appreciate them, like
like
the experiences that they're
like
getting.
basically like if you piss off an INTJ or an INFJ, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a valid excuse. They might just completely jump to a conclusion. They just cut people out, like
Yeah,
they treat them like they don't exist. I kind of think,
that's that's happened to me.
yeah, I think with the avoidant personality disorder, just I kind of got set in that frame of mind where I just cut everybody out basically, and I didn't talk to anybody for most of my life. So I think
Yeah,
I was stuck in my shadow or my super ego in that sense. I kind of think like personality disorders with clinical psychology are kind of like the cognitive functions that are misconstrued basically due to trauma or upbringing.
yeah, like another side of your mind consistently affects, your ego, basically decision making. They kind
Yeah.
of connect more than they normally would. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. And another thing you wanted to talk about was introvert and extroverted functions and differences they collectively share.
Yeah, that's just one of the things I've noticed is that the after I compared T with TI very deeply with my brother and me, and then I applied it to all the others, is that the extroverted functions seem to they like to generalize things. I think like every extroverted function doesn't care about a very big understanding. They're just like generalization, like correlation. Like obviously with the TE versus the TI, right? The TE is more about just wants to know how the things work, doesn't need to know why. And I just have to know all the whys. Why does it work exactly? And then I apply that concept to intuition, and it makes sense too. Like with my NE, I like to just make a bunch of connections on abstract things because they like excite me. It's like, oh, this is connected with that, right? But I don't go any deeper than that. I don't necessarily need to know, oh, why did this happen? Like, what is the underlying principle here? It's more of just I just like to make the connections, and then someone like my brother likes to really understand why those connections even came to be.
Mm-hmm.
So the introverted function like always tries to have a deeper understanding, and the extroverted function is more broad. Like with SI and SE, it's more like, okay, the SE users are just like, well, okay, so here's the environment, these are the tools, the SI users is like, okay, well, have you seen this hammer? It has this, little spike on it, and it was made in this year, so on and so forth.
And SE is just going to grab the hammer and hammer the nail in.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
SI is more specific about the environment and the objects in it. And then, FI and FE, like FE users, they don't really care to understand the moral applications of things as much. And FI
Mm-hmm.
users are more like actually judging if whatever is happening is good or bad, while FE users are just like, oh, you feel bad about this, now I feel bad too. I don't necessarily, understand the thing, but I'm just here to broadly empathize with the moral corruption.
Yeah, so basically, like the introverted functions look at things a little bit deeper, just depending on what
Yeah.
type of function it is, and the extroverted ones just kind of take it at face value and kind of go with it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I noticed with all the functions in
Yeah,
contrast.
that is
That
very
was
true.
interesting. Yeah.
It's all about balance and stuff too, and what Jung called about one-sidedness, like relying on one function or one side of your mind too much is not a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I've been trying definitely to incorporate TE a lot more
Yeah,
um over the past like year. It's helped me.
yeah, it's like one thing. I love INTPs; are one of my favorite types, but it's like, come on, we have to come to a decision. We have to move on to the next step eventually.
Yeah. Or sometimes like we just get so stubborn about something.
Hmm.
It's important to just, even if you think you're right, to just be open that there could be something that could make you be wrong.
Yeah, they just get like stuck with their old information, this one idea they thoroughly looked at, and they just kind of fall in love with it. I guess the way like an FI user would with like a feeling, and
Yeah.
PE users like, well, look at this data, look at this study, look at this book. This person said this.
And especially with the TI, it's just when it comes to the conclusion, uh, that's one thing I've seen with my brother. Like I will conclude something and I will basically go with that conclusion for the rest of my life. And my brother is always kind of has a hard time, especially with his FI inferior, sticking to like beliefs.
Hmm.
He doesn't like he that's his thing with the type. He cannot be sure about his type. He can like never be sure about his type. That's how he always continues to ask. I've explained it to him like I've gone over every function and how every function acted out in multiple examples of his life. And it's just kind of frustrating because, like, I don't know, give him 2 weeks. He doesn't remember I've ever told him that.
Oh, yeah, they
He,
have. If he is an ENTJ, they definitely have that short-term memory problem. I had an ENTJ I used to work with, and she would write sticky notes all over the place just to remember things.
yeah, like it's kind of frustrating. Like he would have to, I would have to give him a text document that he could always like read on what I told him if I want him to
Hmm.
kind of memorize it. So yeah, that's definitely why I think he does not have SI because he is not he is missing nostalgia. When we visit past places where we lived, I always talk about memories and things that happened. I asked him, so what do you associate with this? Do you have flashbacks, nostalgia? He's like, no, none.
It very well be an ENTJ. It definitely sounds like it, but
Yeah,
sounds like you're pretty well versed in typing. So, I mean, I'll definitely talk to him eventually. But I
Yeah.
do need to bring this thing home. So these are questions I
Yeah.
ask everybody. Do you have a favorite type?
I think my favorite types are NTJs, both of
INTP.
them,
So you get along
definitely.
pretty well with your brother.
Yeah, I get along the best with NTJs.
Cool. And a least favorite?
I think I both really dislike SFJs, and I don't know if this is very common under NTPs, but I do not like NFPs.
NFPs. Um,
I
I
I
hear a lot of
have
people say like the INTPs and INFPs get along really well, but I just don't see it. I don't know.
yeah, I do not get along. I have a lot of bad experiences with INFPs. They're always their affiliative ways of doing things always takes me off, and they always they require you basically they require FE heroes. They require so much FE. They just want to be comforted. They don't want to hear the truth, and like it's
Yeah,
so hard for like my mom's an INFP, and I always have to I always have to try to just go on my ESFJ subconscious basically.
just
Just
sugarcoat everything.
yeah, avoid yeah. Sometimes and then sometimes when I TI her basically, she always is like yeah, she kind of gets offended a little bit, and yeah, it's kind of rough. I don't think it's very good. I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with an INFP.
I could see the trouble there.
Yeah.
This question, as an INTP, what would you like others to know about you or just you in general?
Um. Well, I think it's important to know that when you grow up, you have certain generally you have certain like skills naturally and not skills, but it's important to realize that a lot of things you can improve on.
Mhm.
Like you shouldn't just accept a state of being. You shouldn't just accept, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. Uh, like I've done a lot of very disciplinary things that people probably wouldn't associate with, INTPs, and if I just thought, oh, look, my SI is third, I can't be disciplined, then I can't do these things. And yeah, it's important to just also work on all sides of the mind, functions that you're not comfortable with. Yeah, of
That's pretty
course,
good
just try to improve.
advice.
Yeah.
Um, and what about is there anything you'd like to know about INTJs?
Um. Well, I'm always very interested in the relationship you guys have with boredom.
Boredom.
Like when you're at work, for example, and you say you're bored, is it like does it ever get to a point where that boredom is so like bad where you can just not focus, or like what like there's like boredom that you can take, or at least for me it's like that. I can kind of work with it, but sometimes it gets so bad like I could barely direct my attention. Like I would have to have I would need a very strong reason.
Yes, boredom and I don't have a very good relationship personally. I'm sure you have Walmart there. I don't know if you have remember the door greeters that people like usually elderly people would say like, "Hey, welcome to Walmart."
Yeah.
I worked at when I was about your age. I worked at Walmart as a cart pusher, putting in the
Oh.
carts back into the store, and I would have to relieve the door greeter for 15-minute break, and it was like the most agonizing 15 minutes of my life, just standing there saying hi to people. I just basically want to beat
Yeah.
my head in.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I've heard a lot of high and I users say like when they're at school doing something they don't want to do it. They don't see like a meaning in doing, and it just really annoys them. But then when they're off doing their own thing, they have a lot of energy to put in that thing. They want to do it basically.
Yeah, I think that's where INTJs can kind of get labeled as ADHD. Like we have, like I can't learn something that I don't want to learn. Like
Yeah.
I think when in high school, this girl was actually flirting with me, and she asked me like to learn something about this for her, or she was being lazy. Who knows? I don't know if there's a way of flirting. And I like tried reading it, and
Yeah.
I would just stare at the page like I have no purpose of learning this. My NI says no.
Yeah.
My
Definitely.
NI dictates my TE. Sorry. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's we get bored very easily, and we stay focused on a very few specific things. And if we trail off of those few things, then we lose interest.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, I think that's all I have for you. Do you have any last questions, comments, concerns you'd like to express?
No, all good.
All right. Well, I appreciate having you on. And I
All
want
right.
to remind everybody that this podcast is now live on other podcasting platforms such as Spotify, Apple, Google, and all those things. It might not be on Apple yet. I haven't got the verification for that yet. So look out there, follow, subscribe, leave a review. Thank you for going beyond a clickbait and have a great day.